On a rain-slicked midnight in a part of the city most people hurry past, Officer Rachel Hale thought the shift would be like any other until a ragged man and his old dog stepped out of the shadows and rewrote her night. He looked like someone the world had given up on. A soaked coat, tangled hair, a blanket more patched than warmth, and a pair of eyes that refused to look away. He grabbed her sleeve, his voice rough as gravel, and breathed, "Don't turn around." Before she could ask why, a figure bolted from the alley, a flash of metal catching the sodium light. The man shoved himself between Rachel and the danger as if his own life meant nothing. That single, reckless act split the city into before and after. A whispered warning, a leap into harm's way, a dog's low growl. Those were the things that set in motion a story Rachel would carry for the rest of her life. Rachel had been on the force for nearly 6 years, and by now she knew the rhythm of her beat. Same streets, same corners, same forgotten faces huddled in alleys. Most of the time, she kept her distance. Training told her to stay cautious, professional, detached. But this man was different. The urgency in his eyes was raw, the kind you don't fake. His dog, a mutt with a scarred muzzle and ears too big for his head, growled low, hackles raised. Instinct told Rachel something wasn't right, and seconds later, she was proven right. A stranger lunged from the darkness, knife flashing, ready to strike. Rachel's hand flew to her holster, but before she could fire, the ragged man slammed his body into the attacker, knocking both of them into a puddle of rainwater. The struggle was brutal, chaotic, and ugly, but together, with the dog snapping, Rachel shouting, and finally her gun raised, the knife was wrestled away, and the attacker cuffed. When it was over, Rachel realized she was still alive not because of her badge, not because of backup, but because of the courage of someone everyone else ignored. The man's name, she later learned, was David. He refused a hospital, refused praise, refused even a dry place to rest. All he accepted was the blanket she draped over his shoulders and a few packets of food from her trunk. His dog, Max, as David called him, curled at his side, tail thumping against the wet pavement. Rachel crouched down to thank him, but he just shrugged, saying in that husky voice, "So could you," when she told him he might have been killed. It was the first time in her career that guilt gnawed at her, not for hesitating with her weapon, but for almost dismissing him as nothing more than another street ghost. She drove away that night with his face etched in her memory, and she knew this wasn't the last time she would look for him. Days turned into weeks, and Rachel found herself patrolling the same streets with a new purpose. She asked around shelters and soup kitchens, but David was a ghost that the city swallowed easily. Still, she couldn't shake him. Then one night, she spotted him again, leaning against a crumbling wall, Max curled at his feet like a living shadow. She offered him food, water, and conversation, and though he spoke little, his sharp mind showed through the dirt and exhaustion. He knew history, literature, even spoke bits of Spanish and French. It stunned her. How had someone with so much inside him ended up here? Slowly, she began to piece together his past. An accident, medical bills, a job lost, family gone. Life had stripped him down to nothing. Except for Max, he saved me more than once, David admitted, rubbing the dog's head. And Rachel understood. She began bringing sandwiches, blankets, and sometimes just company. Their bond deepened in unexpected ways. One stormy night, she coaxed him and Max into the precinct for shelter. Officers whispered and sneered, but Rachel silenced them with a single reminder: he saved my life. For one night, David slept in a real bed and ate a warm meal. He admitted it felt strange, almost like remembering what it meant to be human again. Rachel reminded him that he had never lost that humanity, and for the first time, David didn't argue. The city wasn't done testing him. One evening, Rachel found him cornered by gang members, taunted for his rags, and threatened with the loss of Max. She charged in with backup, scattering the group, and then knelt beside him, patching his bruises with her own first aid kit. "You don't owe me this," David muttered, ashamed. But Rachel looked him in the eyes and said firmly, "You saved me once. Now it's my turn." It was then that something unspoken passed between them, a connection that neither of them had expected. Weeks later, a missing child case brought them together again. Hours of searching had turned up nothing until David appeared, Max tugging hard at his leash. "He's in there," David said, pointing to a locked shed. Rachel's training told her to doubt, but her heart told her to trust. Inside the shed, they found the boy, scared but alive. The entire precinct looked at David differently that night, though he slipped away quietly, whispering, "The dog knew." Rachel called after him. People need you, not just me. Everyone. Those words hit him harder than any storm ever had. It was Rachel who convinced her captain to give David a chance. She argued for him with every ounce of passion she had. When David finally walked into the station, uncomfortable, clutching Max's leash like a lifeline, Rachel introduced him not as a vagrant, but as a hero. The captain offered him part-time work as a translator, something Rachel had discovered he was skilled at. David resisted at first, but Rachel told him, "It's not charity, it's purpose." And for the first time in years, David said yes. The transformation was slow, but steady. David proved invaluable, helping immigrant families communicate, calming disputes, even guiding teenagers away from gangs. Max became the station's unofficial mascot, loved by everyone. And through it all, Rachel and David grew closer. She realized she didn't just respect him, she cared for him in a way she hadn't let herself care for anyone in years. He carried his scars with shame, but Rachel never looked away. She didn't want to erase his past, she wanted to walk beside him through it. When David was invited to speak at a community meeting after saving the missing child, he nearly backed out. Standing in front of a crowd, his voice shook as he spoke of hardship, invisibility, and survival. But then he spoke of hope, of how one act of kindness had reminded him he still mattered. The room fell silent, eyes glistening. By the time he finished, the applause was thunderous. The precinct made his role permanent, not out of pity, but out of recognition. Months passed, and David moved into a modest apartment, his first real home in years. The walls were bare, the furniture simple, but to him it felt like a palace. Max had his own corner with a bed and toys, gifts from Rachel. One evening, as Rachel helped him unpack, David paused and whispered, "You saved me." But Rachel shook her head gently. "No, David, you saved yourself. I just reminded you who you are." That night, beneath the glow of the city lights, with Max stretched out peacefully between them, Rachel slipped her hand into his. David stiffened, then let the warmth sink in. For the first time in years, he thought about tomorrow, and he actually wanted one. Heroes, Rachel realized, don't always wear badges. Sometimes they wear rags, carry scars, and walk with a dog by their side. But they're heroes all the same.